Welcome to The First Turn. I'm your host, Hyena, and today, Llama and I are talking about This Week in Warhammer. If you like what you hear, give us a like, comment, subscribe, or share, or let us know if there's something you'd like to hear us talk about. Alright, let's get to it.
Hey, welcome to The First Turn. I'm Hyena.
We're back after a bout with Sir.
Yeah, got some some bugs in the system. I got hit with the flu really bad, and haven't really been able to function. We're now back. I can't clear out the gunk. Best way to put it. Yep. But it gives us some time to have had some stuff come out, some things to think about. Obviously, LVO is over. We had the preview from that. Yeah. It was the last time we talked. The excitement that involved that. We've got Eldar to talk about, and all the Aspect Warriors and Aspect Phoenix Lords and all that update. We've got a couple of Destruction battletomes.
Yeah.
Have released / are releasing.
One's coming in 2 weeks.
Yep. So, and we'll talk about that and a little bit about situations, information surrounding those that I think we need to kind of remind some people about, because, man, I tell you, the index is sticking around, call it, even when battletomes are releasing, because the battletomes are so much not an improvement upon the index armies and index rules that I think is taking people by surprise.
Well, and you and I had thoughts like in two directions on it. It was like, well, I appreciate that Games Workshop has kept to their word about they didn't want a dramatic change from index to book in both 40K and AoS. And while we appreciate that they've sort of kept their word on that, the downside is, well, we go from index to book, the rules get locked behind a paywall. And so now we have to pay to unlock our rules, and it ends up not much different.
Right.
And so,
I mean, minor things, right? Like some artifacts or spell lore, something, minor changes. But it ends up feeling like, it's just, well, your book's coming out. You won the lottery, quote unquote, lottery for the book. Mm-hmm. What do you win? You win minus $60 to continue to play your army, because we're not giving you anything.
No.
You just now need to pay for your rules when no one else is. Yeah. Basically, until you get your book. And that feels bad.
It does.
Like excitement around an army update is kind of what is supposed to be driven by the battle tome or whatever the update.
The release style they do. It was always the precedent for years.
Yeah.
Has always like the excitement around an army's update for an edition.
And now, well, maybe they wouldn't be the next broken top tier army. They're still more interesting than they were going into it.
Yeah.
It doesn't really feel that way. And especially not, you're not actually even receiving anything, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like character in a book, when the book is a dud.
And the character's just an update to an old model.
Feels really bad. Yeah. Like if you had an army update like Dark Oath or like Soul Blight's getting, that model release update, or Skaven, the model release that's being provided kind of provides enough excitement around the mediocre battle tome, right? And you get new kits, so you get new rules and new power through that potentially, right? Because I got a new weapon team for Skaven. Well, we didn't have it before, so it's new rules by virtue of the fact that it didn't exist before, as opposed to an update. Soulblight Gravelords, we're getting updates to a lot of kits, but they'll probably feel very similar. Mm-hmm. And even if they're not stronger, they're still cool because they're new models.
Yep.
Right? That's the excitement factor of that. But when it's like, here's an Auric War Clans update, what do you get? Well, one of the three armies, I guess, gets a single model for the book coming out, because they decided to keep the books together. Yeah. That is Iron Jaws and Cruel Boys. Cruel Boys got a new character. Iron Jaws got nothing.
Yeah,
and you're supposed to feel excited for that because your army got a book and nothing else changed.
And they got faction terrain.
A pretty mediocre piece of terrain too.
And really, all the terrain is mediocre because it's their China factory plastic. It's the And it still feels weird that you have to like have a model for it. For what should just be like an army rule or something. And so you're right. Auric War Clans, which is now out, is an example of like, well, you got nothing except a paywall, And if you played exclusively the Iron Jaws half, because some people do, you really got nothing.
Right. It's weird. It's weird. And I think it's reaching that point where it's an outdated model.
It
right?
is.
Like it's an outdated release model, and it's people are catching on to it because, like, you know, when life gets expensive, you start trying to figure out where you can cut some expenses.
Yeah.
And people are now realizing, like, hey, this is an expensive part of the hobby that really doesn't provide much.
Yep.
You know, and then people are going to start circumventing it and ignoring it or not supporting it, and it's not great.
The book method, you know, while they've always done it, and we even personally know, as people who are veterans of the hobby, there are some who always think that there should be a book and that's the way they'll always do it. But it's like, that is getting smaller to where it's like, come on, you have this digital format.
Yep.
You're not giving us that much with the release of an army this time around.
Because if it was released and there was a ton of stuff in it,
sure,
then it'd be like, yeah, this feels worth it. You know, you released half the army initially, and this is the full-fledged release of it.
Yeah.
Right? This is the real army the book provides. Cool. Worth it. Doesn't feel like that right now. It hasn't for any of the books.
No.
So, you know, we'll see. I think one of the weakest parts of the Games Workshop hobbying sphere right now is this point right here is the necessity of unnecessary paper. And once we figure that out, things will be better. You know, because models are getting more expensive, but they feel worth buying.
Yeah, the models. I think it's rare that people are ever upset when their army gets super cool new models, and like you said before, that can drive the excitement of an update to a faction.
Right. Like, I mean,
and so the book isn't it anymore, because
you know?
the book doesn't provide much new.
Right.
And even though some rules are changing from index to book in the two examples here with Gloomspite Gitz and Eldari, I guarantee you, on a unit by unit basis, it's not changing that much. You know, like we saw their Bad Moon cycle is different, and for Eldar, like their fate and all that stuff is changing. But I guarantee you, like power level wise from index to book, not going to change a whole lot.
Right.
And then on the Eldar side, it really wasn't so much new models as it was
just updated
really
stuff.
Old kits.
It's a lot of updates.
It's a lot of them.
But
and the Warp Spider Phoenix Lord is new.
Right.
But it's a bunch of old kits getting updated, cool new models. But as far as I know, they're losing two named characters.
Yeah, they're losing Karandras.
And they're losing, I think, Illerith the Night Spear guy.
Oh, interesting. I didn't know that.
The Ranger, because I think he's only Finecast. And I think someone said they didn't see his entry in the new book. I could be wrong. But yeah, Karandras, even though Striking Scorpions are new,
right?
He's not.
Very weird. So you're swapping some, like net zero, net -1 in terms of units. Yeah. So, and we've harped on that before. We really hope that that changes in the future.
And we don't know what it looks like. Anything we've ever talked about on the show has been just spitballing ideas of how they could handle that with the digital format of maybe you charge a one-time fee to unlock the rules just right in the app, or you make the app itself a little more expensive, but you give everybody the ability to unlock their army. Right. Either of those, I think, is better than the book thing, not feeling like you're getting much for $60.
Yeah. Well, especially when you have to buy more than one book, too. Ugh.
Yeah, if you play more than one army, or if you're interested in dabbling in another.
Yep.
Whoops.
It's rough. But like model wise though, I'm pretty pleased.
Oh yeah.
We said aspects and the Gloomspite stuff looks really, really good.
It does.
I
love these big box releases they do when it's just here's all the new models coming out for a faction in one box.
The pre-order for it went up today, Saturday.
Yeah.
It is book included early, plus it's only 9 models. Because it's like big cavalry models and chariots and stuff.
Because it's 2 chariots, the Lord guy.
So it's 2 units of 3 of the new big wolf riders, which have 2 goblins on each guy, and then it's 2 chariots and then the new wolf lord. It's not that much stuff in there. It's bigger stuff. It's not that much, and I think it was a US $230.
Yeah,
which is like, all right, that's a pretty.
Yep,
that's up there, right?
It is
because it's book plus 2 kits. Call them $60 each because that's the price of a cavalry kit now.
A 3-man cavalry unit. Yeah.
Two of those, 2 chariots, $50 each, and then a new bigger character, $40 45,
40,
50.
50 bucks, yeah.
So 150, 270 plus a book, 330. So you're saving,
Getting a kit for free,
So,
basically. Yeah.
couple kits even. Yeah. So, while it feels like a lot, it's pretty much on par with
It is.
pricing at the moment. So, I mean, I personally am not interested in them unless maybe there's like an Army of Renown that is just that. That's like, well, maybe, or Regiment of Renown. So you can include it in other armies.
Yeah.
But yeah, we've got some folks that do play Gloomspite, and I think this is actually kind of igniting some passion because it does harken back to the old Gloomspite, the actual real goblins, not the night goblins.
And as a nerd aside, on the Warcom site, they did this little fluff bit as far as the mortal realms go about how these are competing deities. How you have the moon god and the evil sun god, and one of them I think can be in any realm, and one of them is in is it Haish is the realm of light?
Yeah,
I think the sun is there.
Okay.
But I guess they don't get along, and then most goblins prefer to be in the dark. But but these ones who ride the wolves have learned to like function in the light.
Interesting.
But they benefit from it, and so it's like more of what we talked about, where within an Age of Sigmar faction, they're creating these competing.
Right. Yeah, because that's kind of a big thing they've been doing. Is it's like, well, here's the faction as you're used to it, and here's a different divergent sub-faction that doesn't like or work with the original faction that operates differently, that still has access to the units and the play styles, and it might be slightly different, but you can still play with all the toys, that kind of thing. But it gives you an alternate way to play. If you like, say, what if I don't like squigs?
Yeah.
Right? Like, squigs aren't my thing. I don't like their goofy giant mouths and no arm. I don't like how they're just
and
heads.
Gummy bears.
I don't like that they're heads with legs and they have these goofy bouncy rules. I don't want to play them. What else you got? Well, we've got these spiders and we've got these trolls and we've got these wolf riders. It's like, okay, yeah. I can do something with that. That's that style of thing,
Yep.
So I do really appreciate
it's
that
even,
they are doing that.
And I am, of course, pro when they expand on what the world of the mortal realms is like. And so when they give us more of an insight into this,
right,
into how these gods
it
fight
is
each other
confusing a little bit, though, when you actually
be.
think about it, because it's like, well, how does that work?
Yeah.
Like when they described the fact that there is a day-night cycle in the mortal realms, and that cycle is actually the sun that you see is just the realm of light moving through the sky.
Yeah.
It's like, huh?
Yeah.
What does that mean? How does the realm of light and the realm of shadow orbit the other realms that are flat discs hanging? Like, it's conceptually, it's like, I don't understand.
And then the way you make it look cool is you do a bit of artwork that is conceptually confusing.
Yep.
Because that's how every fantasy setting does it.
Yep.
Where you've got weird spheres around flat discs around whatever, and then you draw some
circles
and
lines,
and
they're moving somehow, and they're floating in something, and they can see each other through the circles. Like, what?
I have a Tolkien encyclopedia where it's the same thing, where it shows like it's got copies of like some of his original sketches for what the world looked like at first, and it was like it was like that. It made no sense.
Well, just the fact that in the Tolkien world, you literally can sail off of the
by invite only,
right?
But you can. Yeah.
You could sail off of it
in the unseen road. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, what?
Yeah.
And if you aren't invited, do you just fall, or you just
go around the world?
You go around the world. But if you are invited, you keep going straight into space.
And before the first stage, it was literally a flat island floating in space.
Yeah.
It's just. And then they had to change the shape of
the.
But the Mortal Realms, it's like the map gets a little more sophisticated every edition.
Right.
And yet it's like that, where it's like, wait a minute, so that light that's on every plane is another plane.
Yeah.
But
then how does the plane of light have night and day? If it does it orbit itself, or what about the sub realms between realms?
Yeah.
There's Ulkish, which is a shadow light realm, sub realm that's between the two of them. What?
Yeah.
Like, what does that look like? So there's more than the 8 realms.
There's got to be.
There's and then gods. What? Like,
and I don't think and is the shadow realm that Bellicor occupies, is that the same as the one that Malarian occupies?
I don't know. Because like the early description of that realm of shadow was impenetrable.
Right.
No one knows anything about it.
On the first map, it was just like blanked out.
It was blanked because it's like oh, every single realm that you go, like the realm gate that you go in and it ends up in light, there's just creatures waiting that kill you immediately.
Yeah.
Therefore, no one has ever gotten in.
Yeah.
And then it's like, all right, no one's ever gotten in. Okay, cool. And then they talk about the Realm of Shadow and they're like, okay, well, here are these maps of it. It's like, you said no one's ever gotten in, but then you turns out you got in there and they're just people live there already.
Yeah.
You know, it's like it happens a lot, I think, in a lot of fantasy settings or like animes and like in video games and things like this. It happens a lot where like initially you're like, there's this mystical place, no one's ever been there.
Yeah.
And then you get there and there are people living there.
There's
there are civilians, right? There's a civilization, there's a city, there's people who are not powerful like you are,
right?
Who are just normal people living there. And you're like, I've been lied to. Because I was told I needed to be this strong to get here, and I get here, and people have already been here
for like centuries.
For forever,
yeah.
who've lived and died here. Like, did they not realize that this was the case when they originally conceptualized it? And they realized that if you got here and it was just empty, it would be bad.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Oh, it's just a normal place like all the other ones,
right?
Yeah,
I've actually been watching One Piece.
Okay.
And it's exactly like that.
Gotcha.
It was described as like, well, no one's ever been to the end of the Grand Line. And then they get to the end of the Grand Line, and there are cities there, and there are people, and there are people that have gone there and come back. And it's like, oh, well, if you've gone there, you can't come back. And then it's like, oh, yeah, we figure out how to like travel there and back all the time, like every other day. Yeah. And it's no problem whatsoever. And it's just like, I've been lied to this whole time. Like, and you were told me that it was hard, and it's not. You know, it's that kind of thing.
It is.
And so it makes you wonder, though, if it's like when they originally came up with it, did they already have this idea, or are they winging it?
They had no idea.
Yeah, they had no idea what to do.
Backfill it.
And now they're backfilling, and they're like, well, now it would make sense if we didn't do this. So.
Well, and I think sometimes they'll borrow. There'll be that Lovecraft or Stephen King style multiverse where it's like, well, there's this space between realms and we don't know what that is, and it's outside of space and time, and then they make it not like that kind of. So. And
then you realize it's just really mundane, and it's like, oh, they're everywhere.
Yep.
I thought this one was special. No, it turns out they're everywhere.
And there's not just 8. There's actually like 40, or whatever.
Yeah,
and these two are really the same. And the sun goes to all of them or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. Which, I mean, it's fine.
It is.
You know, you just have to change your mind and like realize that the thing they had before was just a placeholder, and not get hung up on that. You know.
Yep.
But yes, the Realm of Shadow currently
it's like when people data mine a game and they see stuff that's coming that's not out yet.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, in Total War, right? We had when Lizardmen was added to not the Mortal Realm. What's it? The Mortal Realm? What was it called? The big map.
Oh, they call it
Immortal Empires.
Immortal Empires.
Immortal Empires. There were sections of that map where, like the map wasn't even rectangular.
No.
Like you could get to parts of the map where it's like, well, you can't pan up anymore, but you could pan over to the left and then pan up.
Yep.
Because there were sections of the world where like ogres were going to be and where all these other factions were going to be that hadn't come out yet, but it was just fog of war and you can't scroll to it. And it's like, oh yeah, I wonder what that's going to be.
Yep.
You know, like you can't tell me nothing is there because I know something is there and I know what it's going to be.
Yeah, and then even when they started having some of them out, they would be nameless versions of a faction that you couldn't play yet.
Right. Was Kalida's one of that?
Kalida's, there was just a random undead faction there. At the time, it was only
the
vampires.
Black Pyramid for what's his name was like that
for Arkan.
Back before Arkan came out,
Yep.
he was like that. He was just like a generic undead faction, single city settlement in the middle of the desert. It's like, I wonder what that's going to be.
They did that with a bunch of the Chaos Waste too, and then now those lords have come out bit by bit and filled in those spaces, which is fine. But I think it's like that. They might have an idea. It's not fully fleshed, so they put a placeholder of, we don't know what's there.
Ooh.
Mystery.
Turns out, stuff's been there the whole time.
And Age of Sigmar, I guess, speaking, while now in its 8th year, is I guess you could say it's not that young anymore. I mean, they're still writing it as they go. I mean, they're just laying the track down.
Well, several of the first years were still kind of wasteful because
it was.
They didn't really do much besides tell us about the time before. right? Because a lot of the stories that they had for Age of Sigmar when it first came out weren't set on any kind of a timeline, right? They were just like, well, before when the fighting first happened during this era, before humans were alive again, here are some stories about, these epic tales. It was basically what it was. It was epic tales. It wasn't. They were epics. They weren't. Yeah. They weren't real history. They were stories. And then once they finally got into
Age
proper,
of Myth, and then Age of Chaos, and then Age of
and Age of whatever, before the Age of Sigmar, when they started fighting back, a lot of those stories were so grand and so nebulous that it was just like, let's jump to the locations. Let's jump to the events. Like, well, how long did it take for them to get there? It's like, doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Like that's kind of how those stories were, and they just weren't. There wasn't enough detail to like really tell what really happened. Whereas now it's like, okay, well now we've got maps and we've got basically a year timeline of how things are happening, how long it takes to do stuff. And it's like, well, because now it kind of matters.
Yeah. Now they don't just. Now it's not just skipping centuries at a time.
Right.
But which is good. And so, some of those gaps getting filled in. So back to that, it was neat to see them talk about this dynamic between the sun and the moon that the various Gitz clans worship.
Sure.
And how they function underneath them. So that I'm always a fan of them expanding that. And it was like that with slaves when they did more on the Dark Oath and like. Yep. Yeah, I love that part.
And now Bellacor's faction and all of his like subterfuge, and then Archeon's fighting back kind of thing, and then the sub factions that are from different factions that follow Archeon as opposed to their own gods. Even like it's gotten a lot more complicated, a lot more convoluted.
And the Gitz are the 5th book in the 4th edition, so it's still relatively young. But courtesy of LVO, we saw a little bit of what's coming in the form of the Soulblight Gravelords.
Yep,
have a pretty big model release. While I don't think it expands the roster a ton.
Yeah, I don't think there was really anything new besides, unless they're adding a new zombie dragon.
Yeah, I don't know.
And keeping the old one.
Oh, right.
Because if it's replacing it, it's a 1-to-1 replacement basically of roster. If they are adding it, then it's a little bit more stuff.
I can see them keeping both kits around, but maybe one of the kits will go specifically to one army, and one of the kits will go.
Yeah. It sounds like you are able to include them in every army just because they are a regiment of renown for single Dracolich or whatever it's called. Dracolich, is that what it was?
No, Dracolich is the D&D version. But it was similar to that.
Draco,
Draco,
Necro Drake. I don't know, something like that.
Yeah,
something with death and dragon in it. And like similar how you can do a demon prince, for example, in Maggotkin. I think it's going to be something like that, where you can include one as a regiment, so you can have it in any faction. I don't think we're going to see like this kit literally makes a Night Haunt, Necro Dragon, and a Flesh Eater Court Necro Dragon. Like they're not going to have different data sheet kind of things, like war scrolls for each army. But I think we'll be able to like include them to bolster an army through this regiment system. Which, again, I'm a really big fan of that as an army design style, sort of list builder system. I end up liking the AoS one much more the more I think about it.
Well, and they haven't done it in a way that is breaking,
right?
Because the regiments of renown they've chosen, I don't think it's felt like it's at random, and none of them are so impactful that it becomes this auto-include.
And you can't expand them, and you can't min-max or optimize them.
And they can't benefit from rules.
Right.
And
so I like it. I really like
what's
it.
funny is I was thinking about that. You contrast that to the first time they tried this in 6th or 7th edition 40K with formations, where it was the opposite.
Right.
Where any army could take them, and you could rule share, and they were just straight better than what those units are within their army because it was that unit plus a bunch of free rules, and it cost no extra points. And some of them even gave you free models.
Yep.
And so that first version was so bad. We all hated that version of the game. And now it's like, I feel like with AoS Regiments of Renown in particular, it's like, okay, yep, this is how it's supposed to look.
Right.
Little modular guys can't share rules, might plug a hole for your army.
Right.
Yeah.
You need a little bit of shooting. Well, you can bring this to your.
Need a little bit of speed. You can bring this thing. Or
Yep.
Yeah.
I like it. I really do. I think it's clever. It was a good way to do it. It lets you bring a little bit from a different army than maybe if you wanted to dabble and.
I bought that Skaven weapon team one.
Yep.
Just for that, just in case I wanted to play it.
Yep. It's funny.
I think it gives you neat little painting projects too. I mean,
because there are a lot of painting projects I have for armies that I don't play that I end up after a while thinking, why did I get this?
Yeah.
Because it's like it's not usable for me in any capacity. I did it literally to paint, and now I want it gone because it's just taking up space. That happens a lot to me, where I'm just like, why? I had no reason to do that.
But the Regiments of Renown justifies it a little bit.
Correct.
And then some of their smaller games, like Kill Team, do the same thing.
Yep.
I was talking with a buddy of ours today who's been getting back into it more and more, Justin, and he was saying the same thing. He's like, I don't want to start another army, but like, would any of you guys consider Kill Team? Because like, I just want to buy that box of like Scions or whatever, and it's like, and that justifies it. And then you can play it in something, and that's one of those things where like a Spearhead or a Combat Patrol, it's like, well, that's a project hobby-wise that looks like you could conceivably complete it in a reasonable amount of time, and then you could even play with it. Like,
yep,
yeah, and at like Adepticon in the last few years, we've seen they give Kill Team its own like feature table a lot of times, so there must be some popularity to it. Which it is February. We are fast approaching.
Oh my gosh, you're right.
Adepticon.
February. Oh my gosh.
We are like
so
7 weeks.
soon.
We're like 7 weeks out.
You done with your Golden Demon entry?
No.
Are you even close?
No.
You got 7 weeks.
Which is more than enough time.
Yes.
If I do it.
Is it going to end up being finishing it in the hotel room like usual?
Maybe. It's interesting because like if that's to be my entry, it's like the parts that I have done look great. It just is as a model, it's not close to done.
Yes,
it's just not as a model or what my original plan was, a unit. It's just nowhere close to done. And then they keep coming out with new ones all the time, and their new models just always look so good. I'm gonna get an Asurman, the Phoenix Lord, because like
I was thinking about the new one, the Strength Scorpion one. No, the spider one, because it looks really cool.
I think the Bahareth looks amazing.
Bahareth looks really good too.
And I think those two in particular are going to be very popular. Not at this Adepticon. I think it's too soon. But for like Essen or for next year, I think we're going to see a lot of that and on social media. But I was like, I don't think I was going to look at Asurman because he's kind of the Ultramarine of Phoenix Lords. But I really like that new model of him. And I don't know if paint job wise they did it justice. Like you look at the sword and it's weird.
The banner looks amazing.
It does.
So they did a lot of work on that.
The sword they just did like toothpaste checker pattern.
Yeah.
And it was a little weird. But having just done that Infinity project kind of gave me an idea of that smaller scale armor which you see on Eldar, because their armor is much smaller than like a Space Marine. And so I feel like I've got a handle on the smaller detail stuff right now. So I kind of wanted to keep that momentum going and see what I can do with him. Plus one Phoenix Sword's not that expensive, and they're thankfully not selling them in like a pack of 6 or something.
Which I thought would be really funny
they were gonna do,
if it was going to be like the Phoenix Council,
right,
and it was a box of all 6 of them together for $300 or something. Like that was that was the first and only way you could get them.
Because remember, the first way they made it for you to get the Lion was that way.
Was him and a
6 Blade Guard vets or something.
Right.
Like that.
Yeah.
Gilliman was in that triumvirate at first. You had to buy 3 models. Like, and so I thought
3 models, 2 of which were Dark Eldar. It's like because it was him. It was
him.
It was him, Voldus, and
it was he had Cypher with him, didn't he?
Oh man, it was the third one.
Because one of them was Inquisitor Greyfax.
Oh shoot!
They did like 3 triumvirate boxes.
That's right. I forgot about that.
But all of them were like that. You couldn't get those models on their own,
and they weren't from the same faction.
No,
and they were all spanning multiple factions.
And those all came that way too.
Yeah. So there's the Yinkarn. It was the Farseer lady with the cat,
and the Friend Zone guy,
and then the Friend Zone Archon guy. Yeah, that's right.
Yep.
And then it was Voldus and someone else and Gilliman.
Yeah.
And I can't remember who the third
was. It was either
was.
Greyfax or Cypher. Because I bought that box and I have 2 of them sitting somewhere. But yeah, it was same with that's how I thought the Phoenix Court was going to come out or whatever. It was going to be like, well, here's all the new Phoenix Lords, but you got to buy them in one box. Nope. They're coming out as individual kits. So good for them. But yeah, I might get into Sewerman and work on that. Not for this one time. He won't be done like in time. But I don't know, that smaller scale. It's a challenge in a different way, because now you're trying to create dynamic looks in a very short space, and that's a different skill than when you're doing it over a large space. And so I don't know. I like to find new ways to challenge myself. So we got. I have enough time to do my Golden Demon. I just have to do it. I have to make that time happen.
Well, now that the Infinity one is finished,
Yep.
You've got that time back that you can start working on it.
Mm-hmm.
So that'll be good at least. I think you'll get it done.
And that one showed me I had time to do stuff, because when I would just set up shop at home, so there's a name for it, and we're getting a little off. We're going to get a little philosophical here. I don't remember what it's called, but there's like there's a study that shows there's this part of your brain that develops when you make certain decisions. And a lot of people who are successful at various things, they show that they're the ones who make these kind of decisions. And it's so one of the examples is when you've got something you know you need to do, but you don't want to do it, and then you make the decision to do that thing anyway. It starts to develop that, not the other way around. And so and then the more you make those types of decisions, the easier it becomes to make those types of decisions. And so people who commit to doing the work like that will do it more frequently. And with that Infinity project, I got stuck in the same rut at first, where it's like, well, I'll wait for my Monday paint night to do it. But then I'd have these nights where I'm sitting at home every now and then where it's like, well, I've got nothing to do right now. What am I going to do? Watch TV for hours and scroll on my phone? Or am I going to just set up my wet palette, which takes a minute, and start painting? And so I would set it up, and then once it was there and you were doing it, now you're in the flow and you lose track of time and you just paint for hours. And so that was encouraging, and I think kickstarts me back into working on the Golden Demon project, because 7 weeks should be enough, even if I were starting something from scratch, if I were doing it.
Yeah.
And then I'll have some weekend days even where I don't have another obligation. So outside of laundry,
Which that takes what, a couple minutes, then you've got 38 minutes of nothing waiting.
Well, and I do my laundry typically early in the morning anyway, so it's I'm done with that at 10. I can now paint. And I got caught up in even being regular football fan during the season. I would go over with my dad and my brother and watch a game, and all of a sudden that eats up a whole day, and I didn't do shit. And it's that was fine to have that time with them. That season's over now because the Super Bowl's about to happen.
I thought you were going to say that you put the kibosh on that. You're not doing that anymore because it takes up too much time. It's eating up my whole day. I should be painting.
I should be. That should have been the mentality, but the season's thankfully over.
Yeah.
There's one game left, literally. So that thankfully I don't think will occupy my mind. But I think hobbyists get stuck in that.
Yeah.
You find something else that distracts you.
Well, it's also you build up, a painting session is this big thing, right? It's I got to commit all this time to
it's
it.
A chore.
I got to get, progress made. I have to set up all my stuff. I got to get all my stuff out. By the time I get that all set up, it's going to be this time. I don't have time to paint anything. I'm going to have to tear it all back down again. Yep. It's no, it really doesn't take that long.
Right, and if I don't do tomorrow, then the wet palette's going to get moldy.
Right.
Yeah.
And so it's no, just sit down and do it and get some progress, and then if you don't have that much time, then stop, set it down, and come back.
We all know how to maintain a wet palette properly too. Is the other thing. So
a lot of them maintain themselves.
A lot of them
close the lid.
Yep. Drain some excess water. Close the lid. You're good. And I got that new XL one from Redgrass to try out those reusable membranes.
Okay.
And that was an interesting. So it is very much not parchment paper.
Okay.
It is very different. And I always wondered how Angel Heraldez has looked the way it did on street. Well, he's using these.
Okay.
And as far as the reusability, it's a little bit of busy work, but it was I took just a wet paper towel, you clean off the excess blobs of paint, 'cause you don't want to pour those down your drain. And then you can just literally rinse the sheet off, and then just let it dry, and it's now you can use it again. And it's whatever it's made out of, it's pretty durable, so you're not, unless you're scrubbing it, you're not going to tear it. Anyway, point is the setup and tear down is usually your first stopping point. But once you are set up and going, like any painter I'm sure out there listening, once you're going, you just get in that zone.
Yeah.
And so put that time in, and stuff gets done a little bit faster than you think, without having to hurry your work. So that was, And so at this last paint session on Monday, I did make progress on them since I was done with the Infinity thing. I was able to. I started on the shield on the guy, got some color there, and then started blocking in a little bit more on the weapon. I haven't fully decided what it's going to look like yet, but I'm going to do some freehand on him, and because he's going to have his unique chapter markings. But if I get him banged out quick enough, who knows? Maybe I'll start 2 more guys to make a unit.
Okay. This is your Space Marine?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Painting a Space Marine for Golden Demon.
Wild. Who'd have thunk it?
I know. Yeah.
Yeah.
Huh.
Well, and it's interesting for the unit category is it looks like you can be a little freeform with that. As long as it's like basically 3 models or more from the same faction, it seems like it doesn't actually have to be a unit. Because we've seen mixed armor units.
Right.
And so I thought of that too. If you really want to show off what that chapter looks like, you get a guy in...
You do your
in
captain,
Primaris armor, you get a guy in...
You do a Terminator.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
You get a guy in Scout armor, and then you can like really show... some differences like what squad markings are on a lieutenant helmet versus a captain helmet versus a
nerds really geek out about that.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah, interesting.
And so we know Soulblight Gravelords.
Yep.
Next for AoS, Eldar's out next weekend. What's next for both? Astra Militarim's on the way, right?
Yep, because they're having their updates to...
Because their Krieger box is out.
The Krieg box came out.
Yeah, it's out.
Yeah, so,
we sold out at the store, by the way. Like, that one went.
I think next for them was... Chaos Knights was on the
They showed
docket.
the roadmap, right?
Yeah. If we can pull that roadmap back up. Let's take a look and see what GW officially says.
Did they give us a
coming.
specific order or just show, hey, this is what's coming?
I mean, it was in an order.
Okay.
Like they it's hard to call it a roadmap because it looked different. It wasn't
it was better than the last one they did.
Yes, but it wasn't it wasn't like what we've seen before, right? Like
No.
it was completely different.
Yeah, it wasn't that tiled
Yeah.
format. But
Oh,
and then the last one was ultra vague, awful, and then this one was like, okay, this is neat again. It's just different.
Let's see. So we know from the LVO preview that an update's coming for Nurgle eventually because they had the new Nurgle champion.
Oh, for Death Guard.
Yeah, the Lord of Poxes.
And it looks like all of the Mono-God factions for Chaos are out this year.
Yeah. So we know that they are going to be doing Emperor's Children, right?
Yeah.
'Cause that was a big one. But all the Mono-Gods are going to be updated. Let's see. Fulgrim plus Lucius plus
and
all
Noise
those
Marines and
plus those Noise Marines and everything.
And those wonderful that elite unit of 3.
Yep.
They're the successors to like the Palatine guys, right?
We've theorized. I mean, that's kind of what kind of the way we put it was. It was like spiritually that unit,
Yeah.
but without them actually being the exact thing.
And I've talked, and maybe I stand alone, that from a fluff perspective, I'm fine when the unit changes names after 10,000 years or it's not the same. But I can't remember his name. I would plug his Instagram right now. He's a guy I watch a lot, but he broke the pictures of that unit down, and it was funny as he goes, at first I didn't think much of it, and then the more I've looked at the unit, the more I fell in love with it because it was like they included a lot of detail, but it was simple, and they didn't like crowd the model.
Right.
But it also wasn't as
agree.
plain as like the Kotias. It was like it was like just a perfect amount. It was like a painter's dream kind of unit. So yeah, I dig that.
Dang, but I can't find the roadmaps.
It's already buried in weeks of stuff. Yeah.
It's been a while.
But I'm just wondering if we have already talked about which on the roadmap for both systems we think has another big model release coming.
Oh, right. Okay. So I do have the
Soulblight's
AoS. I have the
getting a bunch
AoS
of
one.
models.
I have the AoS one up. If you want to talk about that, we have Gloomspite was the most recent release. Soulblight Gravelords is under the category of now.
Yeah.
Right. So like
because they showed it all.
While they're not coming out now, they are. We've seen the box. Right. So that's under the now. What's coming next is Night Haunt and Idneth Deepkin.
That was it.
Which, if an army needs
Oh my goodness.
an update, that might be top 3.
Oh yeah.
Right. Them, I would say, Caradrons and Fire Slayers.
Yeah.
They might be the 3 least represented armies.
Yeah, their rosters are just too small.
They're all brand new for AoS, even.
Yep.
And their rosters are just too tiny.
Yep.
I mean, there are other ones that need updates maybe more. Ogres is a good example of one that needs to be updated. It really needs updates.
And we didn't see them on the roadmap.
But the ogre roster is still pretty large.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so it's
just
like,
old.
So it's like do they need new units? We would like them to have new units, but do they need it?
Well, and we didn't see them on the roadmap for this year.
Right.
And
but they didn't specify like dates, which is why I loathe to call it a roadmap, because it's not like, well, in this month
or this
during
season,
the summer,
even.
this kind of thing. It's just now, soon, eventually. Those are the three categories, basically. And so the soons are those two: Night Haunt, Deepkin, and then on the horizon was clearly Caradrons. It was clearly Blades of Corn, and then what we think is Flesh Eater Courts.
Right.
So like Death is going to be fully updated this year. All the Death factions.
And Flesh Eater Court's got a big model release last edition.
They did.
Late.
Like we said with Usharan and then the Morbeg Knights.
Yeah. It was great set of models.
There's like 5 or 6 different foot characters. There was a new unit of serfs. There was a new Monster Hunter unit. They had I think they had 2 Underworlds warbands that came out. Like there's a lot of stuff that they got. And so this update for them might be small.
Yeah.
You know, it might not be a lot.
But that kind of update is really what I would love to see for Caradrons, for Ideneth,
right,
for Fireslayers.
But so while I don't think Night Haunt needs a lot, because their roster's pretty large already, Ideneth is not. I'd like to see that faction receive a lot of reconceptualization, call it, right, and say, well, we've reworked this faction lore-wise from the ground up, and it's not just this like, oh, well, there's like a handful of living people and the rest are like
ghosts,
or like soul corpses that don't have eyes. That's just the whole army.
Yep.
It's just fish and soulless corpses. It's like no one wants to play that. Like I
well, so you know what's funny is there was a Pirates of the Caribbean movie that came out after the trilogy everybody knows.
Okay.
Well, there were 2. One featured Ian McShane as Blackbeard.
Sure.
And then the next one had Javier Bardem as, I don't remember his name, but he was a former pirate of the Empire of Spain at the time, a former merchant who then Jack Sparrow screwed over and he became undead. So it's funny is their faction functioned a lot like Ideneth, where it was like the trapped souls more of a thing. But then wherever they looked like they were constantly underwater.
Right. Yeah. I remember that.
So, first of all, talk about overcasting characters for not that good of movies. You get a guy like Javier Bardem to play
for a B movie, right directly to video.
Yeah, it's just like wow. But anyway, that's what that reminded me of when I saw the Ideneth Deepkin. It was like that faction.
Yeah, I can see that.
They were these trapped
but
souls.
It's also kind of like if you think about Star Wars, right? Star Wars is funny because we romanticize Star Wars in
as nerds we do
in a way that like conflicts with reality.
Yep.
Because like actual execution of proper Star Wars franchise material is not very good.
Nope.
Like it just isn't.
It's
like
not.
We like the idea of it, but when you actually go and watch the movies, it's like this is garbage. Like I'm sorry, it really is.
It is.
They're just not like the idea of the movie is bad.
Nope.
It's the execution. Literally how it was filmed, literally how it was directed, the script, the poor editing,
story choices,
it's just not. It's not a good piece of cinema.
No.
Right. And so I think one of the funniest things about the prequel trilogy, which was again, it was a long time ago at this point. This is like 20 years ago now.
Yep. It's in the early 2000s.
It was very difficult. I remember as like when I was younger, getting behind when you really thought about it, caring at all about the Galactic Civil War.
Yeah.
Right? Because it's like, all right, well, who's fighting after we get off of Naboo, where the robots are like attacking the natives and stuff like that? Well, who's fighting who? Here's this big war going on between a bunch of artificial people, clones, and a bunch of artificial people, robots.
Yeah.
And so it's like, who can produce?
What are the stakes?
Whose factory can produce soldiers quicker? Is what the war actually is. You know what I mean? It's like, there's no stakes here until like people started developing personalities and clones weren't just clones; they became people.
Yeah,
you know, like it was it was like a who gives a shit moment.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, a plane crashed and there were like 6 clone soldiers on board there. It's like, all right.
I can pump those out of a factory. Yeah.
No big deal, whatever. It's a little bit like that. There needs to be stakes. And I think, that ties into a lot of what I think the weakness of AoS is right now. I'll say that, is it's when they're redoing all this lore a little bit in these new books and stuff, they're kind of taking away the why do I care moments, right? So like Stormcast, for example, have always been weird because they're always like, oh, well, you died and you just teleport back and you get a new body and you just go back to war again. There are no stakes for you.
Yeah.
Who cares then? Well, now there are some stakes because you deteriorate and fall apart and you turn into an automaton and lose your mind. So it's like, okay, finally some stakes. However, they did the opposite for Chaos. They made it so that Chaos has less stakes. Because if you've embarked down the path of becoming a Chaos warrior now, you are locked in your armor. You're not a person anymore.
Yep.
You're a body inside of armor. And now that when you die as a Chaos warrior, you basically go back to the warp and you come back out fresh. It's like, where did the stakes go? There aren't any more stakes. Like the whole point was that like, oh well, if you fought your way through the arena and everything, you became a Chaos warrior, you were a singular entity of like amazing war, like prowess in war. Like the fact that you're undefeated basically to get to that point is what makes you amazing. Not like, oh well, you can fail as many times as you want. We can just let you keep retrying. Like I don't care for that as a there's no motivation there. You know what I mean? Yeah. And so I was not crazy about that being dumbed down a little bit. It made me feel like that. Clones versus robots.
Yep.
Just a who cares war kind of thing. So that aside though, improvements to the setting are still, changes to the setting are still welcome. But it has to be meaningful. It has to be valuable. It has to be like something for me to care about.
Yeah, and
it's one of my big things about demons in general. In any of the Warhammer franchises, it's like, oh, Scarbrand just died. Okay, well,
doesn't matter. He's
doesn't
back.
matter. He's back. You know,
because they can't like be perma-killed really. And well, I think they miss an opportunity on that front and on the excitement front every time they come to one of these factions that doesn't have a big roster and they just do a model, one hero, and then move on. That means it's another like 3 years in the doldrums for that faction,
right?
Losing interest, people not, and you're going to end up with those massive player disparities where you might get a tournament setting, let's say, where it might not be that Fire Slayers aren't good. It's that you've made them so uninteresting for 4 editions in a row that nobody's playing them anymore.
Right. And then you look, it's like, oh man, no one's buying Fire Slayers.
Yeah, and so then they consider dumping them.
Must be a bad faction. No one's interested and whatnot. So let's just cut them. Yeah, let's just send them to the old world.
Right. Or let's stop supporting them.
No, it's not the same thing. But it's almost like a self-defeating thing.
Yeah.
Right. It's like it's not really how fantasy died, but similar. Right.
Yeah.
Where it's like, oh, well, we didn't put enough effort into it. People aren't interested anymore. Let's put some effort into it. Oh, no one's interested in this effort. Well, it's because it's too late. So let's scrap the whole thing.
Yeah, and that was a case of too little, too late.
Right. You need to keep the excitement up. You need to keep the incentives up.
And if you're going to be on this release clip now, where you're deciding every 3 years you have to do a new edition, you got to make everybody's faction exciting.
Yeah.
And I don't know if like Fire Slayers have been around since AoS 1.
Yeah.
We can't go another edition where they just get a freaking hero, and that's it.
Right.
And ogres.
No, they also got one other thing: price increases.
Oh yeah, at least they did that.
Yeah, because the original kit for the Magma Droth was released at like $72.
It was,
or $80, something like that. That kit is now like $140,
which is funny
and
because
nothing has changed.
The start collecting before it became a Vanguard, before it became a Spearhead,
was like
used to have one in there,
like
and
$95.
you used to get that for cheaper than the kit on its own.
The Carnosaur, for Seraphit, it was like a $109 box that included a Carnosaur in it, and then they redid the Carnosaur by itself in a new box, and it was like $125. But the start collectings were still on the shelf for $109, which included one and 30 other models.
Yeah.
It's like, what the heck?
I'm not even playing that army, and I feel like I'm losing money if I don't get it.
I don't even play it. I feel like I'm losing money just looking at this.
And well, and Yeah, they can't have that happen again. And then in the case of like ogres, where it's like, well, the roster's not that small, but like so much of their stuff is so old,
right?
That if you're deciding to commit to keep them, you better. We don't have them on the roadmap right now, so when they come around,
right,
they better get one of these big box releases.
Yeah, that's what we were saying about.
You got to maintain their interest.
We had. Did I ever put the 40K one up?
No. Because I didn't know what was after. Because Astra Militarum has early access right now with the Krieg kit, and then Eldar or next weekend we'll all have them in hand. But what was right after that? That's what I didn't remember.
All right, it was in the Nurgle article. So now for 40K, Eldari, Astra Militarum, Emperor's Children. So Emperor's Children is considered.
They're considered now, so they're imminent. Okay.
Yeah. The coming next is World Eater's Death Guard.
So all the Chaos...
Thousand Suns.
They'll all
That's
be
what
out.
we were saying. Is all of the marked factions are upcoming for the next releases. So that after Emperor's Children, the other three, so all four are done. Okay.
Hot.
Beyond that, the kind of bizarre pictures we saw. Again, I would say bizarre because they threw us a little bit.
Little mysterious.
Because the three factions that we have, so I had mentioned Chaos Knights.
Yep.
Is one that's upcoming. Because it's very clear, like here's a war dog in the background, and here's a chaos chainsword on a knight. It's like it's very obvious what it is.
Because it's pointy,
right? So it's got spikes and blades.
Yep.
But the other thing on the horizon was Grey Knights. Clearly,
it's
got the boot of a Grey Knight. It had Salamander's aggressor.
That's the odd one, right?
Salamander's aggressor armor, like whatever that is. I couldn't say it's an aggressor. Mm-hmm. But it's got like
Gravis armor.
It's got Gravis armor and that cowl and kind of the badger face helmet and all that. Like it looks like an aggressor.
And it's unquestionably a salamander.
Yes, with the flames, 100%. And then there's an axe from the Grand Marshal kit for Black Templars.
Yep.
So it was
That's right.
Black Templars, Grey Knights, Salamanders on the horizon, Chaos Knights.
And I was speculating this with a friend of ours about that salamander picture, and I don't think they accidentally chose a salamander. However, I also don't think that means inside of 10th edition, which we really only have 1.5 years left of 10th edition probably. I don't think that means that all of the first founding chapters are going to once again get their own supplements right off the bat. But what this could be is the start of them doing what I saw someone speculate a while back, which was Codex Spacemarines eventually just becoming Codex Ultramarines.
Right.
But then also rules for playing your own homebrew, whatever. And then those first founding chapters that used to have very different rules breaking away one by one.
Right.
Salamanders maybe is the first one they're going to try it on. And, I guess Black Templars kind of were. But
now, I will say that as an idea, Salamanders would be one of the best ones to do that with.
Yep.
I think... White Scars would also be a very good candidate because they are very unique in their like aesthetic and play style.
Yes.
But Salamanders is a great choice to do this with because if they break off and become their own thing, they need to have enough unique stuff to make them justified. Yep. Right? Like look at Space Wolves.
Oh yeah.
The Space Wolf difference between them and Ultramarines, the normal Marine book, is like everything. There are upgrade sprues for literally everything.
Yeah.
They have their own Devastators. They've got their own Blade Guards through, like they've got their own Terminators, the Wolf Guard. They've got their own the jump pack
cavalry.
They have their own cavalry. They've got their own dreadnoughts. They've got their own flyers. They've got so much of their own stuff.
Yep.
That it's like this is a different army.
Well, and Blood Angels and Dark Angels are that way, and
I'd say even Black Templars are like that.
And Black Templars
look at them; they've got their own characters that are unique for their captains, and they've got these Blade Guard veteran types called Blade Brethren that are their own thing. They've got neophytes that are mixed.
They're
units.
mixed armor,
they're very different.
And so I could see them giving that a shot with one of these chapters that function divergent,
right?
And the other thing that we talked about is long-term plan. I think the issue they run into with Codex Space Marines continuing on the way it is as long as all the chapters are in the same book, it's really difficult, unless they make a singular chapter rule so egregiously better like they did with White Scars for a while,
right?
that it's like, well, Ultramarines are just going to be the best choice in the book because they have so many characters to choose from who are all good.
Right.
And if you only include a Salamander's character, Iron Hand's character, like you're just never going to play those when it's like
never enough.
When it's like when I have Ventress, Calgar, Gilliman, all these Tigurius who are all so good.
And while you don't need to include them all every time,
no,
you have the options. So it's like,
and so I think the only way you're really going to make those other chapters viable again, I don't think in was it 9th edition they didn't handle it well.
Right.
When they gave them their own book and you ended up with like Iron Hands that were insane, but that might not have been the way to do it. But it might be time to start. You don't have to do all of them like Crimson Fist, but it's like take 3 of these chapters that are very different and one by one maybe start breaking them off.
All right. So if you had, you said 3. If you had 3 to break off, what are they? What are they going to be?
Out of Codex Space Marines, Salamanders, White Scars, and so it's funny is I would choose one of 2 for the last one. It would either be Iron Hands, not because I'm biased. I don't even have them anymore.
Right.
But their chapter structure is very different, and the technology they have access to is very different. And so you'd have weird Mechanicum crossovers and cataphracty suits, or you go with the second founding chapter in Crimson Fist.
Okay.
And like Black Templars, which are a second founding, you do that. You go second founding and make them super different.
Now, see, I agree with those 3 that you originally said, though. I mean, obviously, Salamanders can be very different.
Yep.
You've got the
White Scars.
The White Scars are very, very different. And then Iron Hands being so Mechanicum focused that it's like you could very much make a unique faction out of that. The other ones,
even
though,
where they have a Dreadnought character.
The other ones, though, like Imperial Fists, they're just yellow Ultramarines.
Yep.
I mean, even the Raven Guard, like...
Oh, Raven Guard.
I'm sorry, Raven Guard.
Well.
You aren't unique.
You know what,
I don't think...
But they could be.
but
because Raven Guard, they could lean so heavy into Phobos and Jump Pack and all that.
But the thing that's funny is, if you look at the Phobos and Jump Pack and all that stuff, almost none of that really feels like it should be part of Ultramarines because they don't use any of it.
Right.
Really. And besides like Scouts, like I don't see any of that stuff in any lists. And so I feel like all that stuff is kind of for Raven Guard anyway. Here's the other one that they're the only ones that really want to use it.
But that is one that I could see them doing the Divergent.
But I think it'd be funny is if they did choose Raven Guard, they just cut all Phobos out of.
You make that unique to.
They cut that out of Codex Ultramarines, and it's just like the only ones that use Phobos armor is Raven Guard.
Yeah,
because it's really the only ones that kind of want to, in terms of lore, like.
Yeah, they could.
That'd be funny.
And
be kind of funny. But those other armies though, Imperial Fists and even Crimson Fists and your Raven Guard, they still feel like they're very Codex compliant, and so they could absolutely just stay that book. You know what I mean? They're not. I feel like you could keep them the same. Yeah. Whereas the others are just they feel like they're so different already that it'd be a no-brainer to cut them and develop their own thing for them.
And like Primarch speculation, whatever.
And that's the other thing, right?
So
is that was the other thing I was kind of getting into is it's maybe because of Primarchs, but it's also maybe because of named characters and updates like that. That's why they're on that list of things to come. Is because there are plans to release a named character for those factions that is kind of missing.
Well, and I could see like Vulcan Heston. Is still one of the few Space Marine characters left in Finecast.
Yep.
They might do a plastic version of him.
Yep. That might be why. But I mean, Vulcan is an actual character that's still present in the universe, and they could do a new Primarch. I had speculated that.
Although I do expect Lehman Russ is coming.
Yeah, well, probably eventually. Yeah. But with Grey Knights, we haven't gotten a new Drago either. He's still kicking around. Yeah. I could see a plastic Drago
who's big
being released and being kind of the poster of Grey Knights for their eventual rework because it's a weird army too because they just don't have.
It's like Custodes.
Tools?
It's like Custodes where they either overtune or they're awful.
Well, and I think Custodes is a really good point. Is it's Custodes kind of do what Grey Knights want to do. They're better Grey Knights.
Yeah.
Kinda. Which is a weird thing to have done because it's like all the love you put into Custodes that could have been just given to Grey Knights instead. Because like they operate
who are already an army.
They operate so similar.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, on the surface, you know, very elite, very low number. Maybe shouldn't even be an army because there's not enough of you to justify it.
Right.
As a faction, like Imperium compared to the Tau Empire, we have done that comparison before too, and it's like the Tau Empire is so small compared to the Imperium that it's like it's almost not worth considering as like an actual faction in the universe or the galaxy. Yeah. Same thing with like Exodites, right? Dinosaur riding Eldar on one planet, or Beast Nagas that exist on one planet. It's like this shouldn't be an army.
Nope.
It shouldn't be a faction because it's such a small thing compared to the grand scale.
I think the standalone Imperial Agents thing was a giant mistake.
Yeah.
Because it's literally a hodgepodge of all the things that aren't big enough to be a standing army,
right.
or they're not even military. They're like police and they're administrations, and they decided we're going to make a separate codex for them, which just doesn't function. So then we're going to emergency release a detachment for Death Watch, which ended up better than the rest of it. Because by the way, they won LVO, Death Watch, and it like.
How does that happen? That's so funny.
Yeah.
Gosh.
Death Watch are so good in this new detachment, and like Imperial Agents blows.
It's funny.
So, but that's to your point. It's like some of these I don't feel like ever should have been standalone, but now we're here. Grey Knights will probably get. I could see a Drago and plastic being their new thing. But anyway, like Marine chapters becoming Divergent, Salamanders could be the start of something. It could be a method we see once per edition where they branch a chapter out. Yeah. Because
they've already done it with 3.
Yeah,
right?
and I saw a far flung rumor that was like, at some point, although I don't know what would be left, that could also be how they eventually do something like Alpha Legion, Iron Warriors, whatever.
Sure.
And why not start it with the Marine chapters, and that's how you get other Primarchs out. That's how you know.
So if they did that with one Chaos Space Marine faction, which one would you want it to be next? Because they've got the 4, right? The four marked ones.
Well, I think if you're going to go with one that has a Primarch, it would be Iron Warriors because Perturabo's active.
Yes. Yeah.
And who wouldn't want to see big Meccano Perturabo?
Right. Half tank, like he's the size, like his body's the size of a rhino or something. Yeah. You know. Yes, I think Iron Warriors is an obvious choice. I
think Word Bearers.
I would also love to see Word Bearers. Yeah.
Lorgar. Yeah.
See what he looks like now, because I've always been interested in Lorgar, not just because he's literally being harassed by my Primarch Corax in the warp, but it's also like this was the guy that started it all.
Well, you know what's funny is like, and in the lore from the days of the heresy all the way to now, while Erebus was considered like the catalyst, he didn't end up universally hated. Lorgar did. Lorgar ended up...
Erebus should have been universally hated.
Right.
That guy's the worst.
And it's funny is like... And there were guys even like Abaddon who hated him, but then spared him, and then now, 10,000 years later, doesn't care about Erebus. But Erebus was viewed, even though he was hated, was viewed as such a useful tool for chaos to operate in the material realm, and he is somehow not overtaken by it. He has this weird mastery of it.
Right.
Lorgar was exiled even from the other word bearers, to where during the war he was on some planet no one knew about with all these people who wear like leis who worshipped him because he wasn't welcome anywhere. He couldn't even fight along. He had to get on Zoom calls with Erebus to ask him how the war's going, and Erebus would be like, "Oh, don't worry, Dad. No, it's fine." And like Lorgar wasn't welcome anywhere, and he wasn't even as responsible as Erebus was.
Right.
But Erebus gets to be a player in the game, and Lorgar wasn't welcome during the war, and then now he's hunted by Corvus, and so he still can't do anything. So I don't even know.
Yeah.
That said, we know he's active. They've got artwork for him as a Demon Prince that looks badass, and like, so he's one that I could see. I feel like if they did an Undivided one, it'd be Perturabo first. But Lorgar and the Word Bearers as an army would be interesting because now it's like it's all that cultist and weird magic side. But my only thing with the Undivided factions splintering off is what does that leave for Chaos Space Marines, really? Does it just become Black Legion? Like,
yeah, exactly. I mean, there are other Undivided Legions in there that aren't Black Legion, I guess. I mean, you got, what's his name, the Red Corsair guy.
Yeah, Huron Blackheart.
Blackheart, who is an Undivided faction.
And he's active.
You know, so it's like, I mean,
he needs a new model.
There's other things in there that, you know, could wear. They're not all Black Legion.
No, you're right.
So, I don't know.
And they might not need to ever do those. They might just do the Primarchs on their own.
And then what does Alpha Legion look like?
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? Like Alpha Legion's representation in recent times. I mean, look at like Dawn of War and stuff. Like when Alpha Legion was, I think it's one of those things where they should have retconned that after the fact and been like, actually, this wasn't Alpha Legion. This was just the Black Legion.
Yeah.
Because if you look at Dawn of War 2, the big bad in that was an Alpha Legion Chaos Lord, and there's all these like Alpha Legion Chaos Marines who are all crazy, warped, and mutated and stuff. And it's like, that's new lore for them is not, that doesn't work for Alpha Legion, really.
And in newer lore that I've seen for them, they're one of the least chaotic in terms of mutations.
They're like one of the least convincing Chaos Space Marine factions.
Yeah. And
you look at them and you're like, are you sure?
They had some of the first encounters with Primaris Marines, and reading that perspective from them, they're one of the few that hasn't like lost their mind, and like they're still very grounded.
Yeah. And so, well, maybe they're agents of chaos in the sense that like they want to destabilize things. I don't think they're agents of chaos as the ruinous powers. Right. You know, I'm not even convinced they even are traitors. Like, I'm not still. You know what I mean? Like,
I don't think they're allied to anybody.
Alpha Legion's so weird. They're so bizarre, and they've got their own machinations, and they're planning and plotting and doing so many weird things. They're like, who are they working for?
They're like the Cabal. Like they're that like rumored shadow government type faction that's got subterfuge and stuff everywhere. Like it's funny because something just happens somewhere random and you're like, what the hell is going on here? And then like it turns out you resolve it, and then you like find the bad guy and you stop him, and he falls down and like his shirt pops open and it's just like, Alpha Legion, what? Yep.
How did this? How were you Alpha Legion the whole time? Like, how did you even know about this place? It's that kind of thing, or it's like, what the hell?
And so I don't know if they'll ever branch those undivided factions off to their own books, but I could see them doing it with some of the Marine ones, the Loyalist ones, and the reason really is because I don't think a chapter of Marines getting their own book will never not sell.
Right.
But
it's also got to be a popular one.
And
not a niche one like Crimson Fist.
Right. And I think for the Salamanders one, we've speculated at length what it could mean. Whether or not it means they'll get Vulcan this time, I don't know.
Right.
But it could be the start of them where maybe Vulcan Hesting gets a plastic. Maybe they get a couple of unique kits that separate them, where they've got, because like Dark Angels have their own Blade Guard vets in the form of the whatever they're called.
Inner Circle.
Yeah, and then they've got their own Deathwing Terminators, and they got their own bikers. And so like you do 2 or 3 kits for the Salamanders that are only they get these versions of an aggressor unit.
We had speculated like a Hammer and Shield sort of Terminator or aggressor unit.
Yep.
Something unique. Some kind of a flamethrower specific unit. I mean, we've got the new flamethrower Primaris, but like something like that, but it's unique to them.
But theirs, and then I know they can't help themselves but to release new characters of some sort. You might see another Salamander we've never heard of.
I mean, maybe a tank.
Yeah,
maybe some kind of tank that's got flamethrowers on it or meltas on it, like
and
a very specific.
Yeah, now it's the start of them having their own supplement going forward.
Right.
And they'll probably release a big box kit with here's all the new stuff. I'm not mad at that, and we've got a buddy who has been loyal to Salamanders forever and wishes he could play them as Salamanders, but it's the same every time he opens Codex Space Marines. It's like, well, the Ultramarines are just better, or the White Scars are just better.
Are just green Ultramarines.
Yeah. And I do think that's a part of it, is as long as the Ultramarines have so many characters in the core book, it's hard for the other chapters to get play, because you, as someone who's played Raven Guard, for example, you can't look at Shrike and think, I'm going to take him over Marnius, Ventress, Tigerius. Like, no. Like, those guys just do so much more for generic Marines. Whereas however, Raven Guard eventually had their own unique units, now you're talking. Like, now they can be viable.
Yep. They did do a little bit, to make some of those characters more attractive. Mm-hmm. Raven Guard specifically, they made it so if you bring Shrike, the OC of Assault Marines with jump packs goes up to 2.
Okay, yeah.
I mean, that's not nothing.
It's not.
Right? It's interesting, and it makes him more attractive, obviously, because he is not costing more for getting that benefit.
And it shows they're, like, trying something.
But it's also like, OC2 of my assault guys, but you have to bring Shrike, which locks you out of everything else. I don't
That's
need
just
I don't
it.
need OC2 in my assault marines
Right.
if I've got a super oath that can destroy the unit, and I just get one OC on there and get it.
Yeah.
Like, plus that also means like I'm trying to take objectives with my assault marines, which is not what they want to be doing. Like it's just odd. It's an odd thing. Like I said, if it were a much larger blanket rule for certain patterns of armor or something for being quote Raven Guard,
Well, and
like that would make it more attractive.
Well, and I think once the chapters are divergent, that also justifies future characters to expand
Sure.
them. I mean, because you look at Space Wolves, Dark Angels, Blood Angels, they've got a handful of characters each, and so you've got a variety of different ways you can play them.
Right.
And again, that could be now this Salamanders thing could end up totally not that at all. It could end up a campaign thing or something, and
Right.
we're just overthinking it. But
Yep.
if it is them diverging, they could all of a sudden end up with 3 or 4 characters and a couple of unique units, and then I could see them doing that if it's successful for White Scars, for Raven Guard, for Iron Hands, for these ones that function differently.
I mean, I feel like also White Scars has just been waiting for an update like that too, because again they're so unique. And
They've been popular.
They've kind of like cut down on all of their like named characters and stuff too, and made them less interesting.
Yeah, Kasaro Khan can't even take a bike anymore.
Yeah, lost Moondraken.
Yeah.
Because he used to be able to take a bike or a speeder, right? Couldn't he?
I think he was just a biker on foot.
I thought he had like his own land speeder too. Like there was
Maybe.
I know there was a Dark Angels character that could do the same thing.
Right. Samael?
Samael had his jet bike, but I thought there was like multiple characters that had like multiple different rides, and Corsaro Khan was one of those where he could like ride multiple different things.
Well, I remember the metal version of him they made on foot, but rules-wise you could take him on a bike.
Yeah.
And then they made the plastic version of him, and he's only on foot now.
Right.
Which I'm fine with, but you got to give us a White Scars character on a bike.
Right. I mean,
he's not even the chapter master. He's third company man. Like, why don't these guys have their chapter master?
Right. I mean, it took a campaign and assassinating a chapter master to make Shrike the chapter master.
We'll just make Shrike the...
That one was funny.
Yeah.
Because, like, the guy got just obliterated.
Yeah.
And they were like, well, now he's dead. So, Shrike, you want to do it? And he's like, yeah, all right.
Yeah. And
do I get a new model? And they were like, no.
Well, even with Iron Hands, it was like they make Pharaohs, and it's like, why didn't they just decide he was the chapter master? And it's like you read the lore, and it's like, nope, he's totally just like number 2 tech marine, because the chapter master, Valdrak, himself is a super Iron Father.
Well, why didn't you give us him
Why
then?
did you make him?
Right.
Or why didn't you just say Pharaohs was him? And then it was like, and then, but with that, they've got opportunities because some of their company captains are dreadnoughts.
Yeah.
Because the way their Iron Council works. Anyway, yeah, they need to make chapter masters for these. So, I don't know. I don't know why, because I've never had much interest in salamanders, but that on the calendar is just one of the most intriguing of everything we can see, because it's the true mystery on there.
Right.
What does that mean we're getting? No.
And then the other mystery we have is the weird silhouettes and stuff, which the 40K silhouette that they had showed for LVO that caps off the end of the roadmap was clearly some kind of Space Marine. It had a power pack backpack of some kind. So that one was like not interesting. The one that was interesting though was the AoS one, which out beyond the end of the roadmap was either it was some kind of shadowy figure with eyes and chains and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Which again, people speculate some kind of Hashit faction.
Yep.
I mean, we know there's waiting in the shadows. We've got Malarian's faction, whatever that looks like.
Yep.
Who knows? Like that one was a big mystery too, but
agreed.
No idea if that's this year or if
No,
it's next year or if it's something that won't ever get paid off.
I thought they'd said the roadmap stuff was all for 2025, but that makes for a pretty robust year.
Right. But that, I mean, if we're going to see something with that, it's going to be the end of the year.
Yeah.
So far, what we've got plus Undead plus, maybe Idneth getting a big release is all we're going to receive for AoS probably this year. Plus whatever this mystery thing is, who knows? I'm still holding on hope that they're going to have a new Warcry replacement or new season or new edition, a new something.
They didn't really do roadmap for any of those specialist games, so we don't know.
Most of them they did something. They at least mentioned and talked about by name. Warcry they didn't even mention.
No.
So Makes me worry, but we'll see.
Well, yeah, I don't know. That is weird that they didn't even mention it by name. They didn't really do much roadmap wise for the specialist games.
Yeah.
Which means they always just kind of sprinkle them in. You and I talked, and what I don't want, because like we went through AoS 3 with the exception of like 2 armies, where it just felt like all they were doing was booking them out, and now I'm like worried that it's like, well, now we're releasing the endless spells or the faction train we never did in a book.
Right.
Endless spells faction train in a book. It's like, I don't want that to be AoS 4. We can't waste an edition with only like 2 or 3 armies getting significant stuff. You gotta gotta spice it up.
You've got 5 armies that need massive releases.
Yeah.
Skaven got something good.
They did.
Needed that. But they're not the only ones. And that was you're done with that. Right?
Yeah.
That was
right out
a
the
year
gate.
ago, basically. All right. What else you got? Do the next one. Undead getting a big update. Good. They needed it. Because the old skeletons were bad and they got replaced. The old Graveguard were bad. They needed replaced.
But are you going to skip over Idneth with nothing?
But it was like...
Because what have we seen? Because Idneth's right now, quote unquote.
Right.
What have we seen in the rumor engine that looks Idneth?
Yeah.
Are they going to make us wait until Adepticon to see them? Maybe.
I mean that would make sense.
Could be
as if the coming soon was the next quarter, basically.
Yeah.
I could see it. I mean, we did get Idneth at Adepticon a few years ago.
And
that was when we first heard about it.
Did you get the preview event added to your cart?
Of course.
Yeah.
Had to.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, usually it doesn't matter. You just walk in anyway, but I didn't want to risk it. I would guarantee
No,
it.
I like to be like, hey, I got this.
Yeah. Let me show you my badge.
I'll go look at a screen that's too small from where we're sitting. But yeah.
Oh, but you could just be in your hotel room and watch it on the stream.
Yep.
Yeah, you're right. I could. But let me ask you another question. Why the hell would I do that ever?
Yeah.
I'm there in person, right? Like,
and I'm going to see it 2 hours before you do.
Right. And so I don't want to like not call anybody dumb or anything, but it's just like just the priorities for some people even we know, just kind of aren't quite right. It's like the whole point of going to a convention is to be at the convention and have fun. And one thing I can do only at a convention is to go to a live preview.
In a preview event.
Even if it's only an hour before we could see it in an article. It's still exciting. It's still fun.
And short of the 1 year that we can think of, the preview event really is never disappointing.
Right.
And they even like...
Even the most boring preview events are still fun.
Going to them live, it's fun. And
there was one where they showed only stuff we'd seen leaked the few days before.
That was at a Gen Con.
That was not great.
Which they don't do it at Gen Con anymore.
That one was not great.
No.
That might have been the only one I can think of in recent history that has been like, why did we go to this? We even signed up for the one the next day just to see if there's anything different. Because we were thinking it was really funny. It was $2 or something.
Yeah.
But we were thinking, oh, well, surely if they leaked the stuff and they've got more than 1 day of preview event, the stuff that leaked was only the first day's worth of stuff. Day 2 is going to have more. And it was literally the same thing. We watched the same Warhammer Plus episode. The same episode of Hammer Bolter. God. No wolves on Fenris.
Yep.
And there were. The guy has to kill a Fenrisian wolf.
There was a wolf.
And take his tooth. That was the whole point of the episode. Yeah. Anyway. Gosh, that was not great.
But they don't do that at Gen Con
anymore. They don't do that anymore.
That's Nova now.
Man, yeah, that was funny.
And like when they first tried the new format, which we talked ad nauseum at that one Adepticon, that was not good. But they've corrected course since, where now they show more of the models while they're talking. So I'm always excited for that one. I don't think that'll be disappointing.
Yep. The new convention models this year are looking pretty great. So there was a new Skaven Warlord, which I have to get.
Yeah.
Maybe more than one, because he has a claw and like a sword, like a hook and a claw. Is that what it is?
Looks great.
He looked great.
And then it was a Gene Stealer.
And it was a Gene Stealer cult one, which we've got some buddies who do this. So not a waste of time getting the convention models this year. They never are, but these ones are particularly useful. Previous years, I mean, maybe like we were excited about them, but they were like, not a terribly useful model to have. This time, though, big time. 100% is.
Well, I mean, there's usually a Space Marine, and this time they didn't do that.
Yeah.
So that's always a little exciting when it's...
Well, last time they did a Commissar.
Oh, maybe.
Was it a commissar and a...
Yeah, we had a buddy who wanted us to get that.
And the Crow Knight.
Oh, that one ended up really popular.
Yes, but what the funny bit about that model is he was like a replacement model for one model in the unit of characters for Cities of Sigmar. So like you couldn't even play him by himself. Mm-hmm. He was one of 6 models in a unit.
So you have to buy that box of 6 models to get that unit, and then you got to
not use one and play him instead. It was really weird. It was a super cool model. I wish they would have released those models as just models on their own.
Yeah.
Right? Like that unit shouldn't be a unit. It should be like, here are secondary heroes that can't lead regiments that you can bring as a secondary hero in a regiment.
Right.
To do a
maybe when their book comes around,
to do a role, right? Yeah. I don't like that they're the command corps and they're a unit of 6 characters that do way too much. I'm not a fan of it. Plus, then you have to commit to having 6 models. They were all basically characters.
Yeah,
I like what the Bird Whisperer does.
But that model ended up really popular. There were a lot of content creators who painted that one.
I painted it the day of. Mm-hmm. I got it, put it together, painted it, and played with it in an event the day I got it.
Man,
yeah. So I also really liked that model.
Yeah,
but
don't need 7 weeks for that.
But this year, yes, it's 2 really cool models that are actually useful, probably for the armies that they even are for.
Yeah.
Like very much like, I could just use the Skaven as a Claw Lord.
Yep.
Because the old Claw Lord model isn't very good. This one is like, you probably should just release this model instead of being an event model.
And I like that they chose, 2 armies that are not just like the safe human.
Right.
They didn't just do Stormcaster, Cities of Sigmar. They didn't just do Astra Militarum or Space Marines. It was like, nope, we're going off the beaten path here.
Here's Skaven and Gene Stealer Cult Patriarch.
Yeah.
He wasn't even a Patriarch. What do they call it?
He's just a...
what do they call the leaders?
Primus.
Primus?
It was that or
Magus?
it was...
Magus is the lady, right?
Yeah, that's the Psyker, yeah. But it was just, you could have it stand in as any one of those Gene Stealer Cult characters. Like, so good for them. They both look really good.
Yeah. I have to get them. I'm not mad at it. I always get the event model.
They're never that expensive. It's just like a character in a box. Yep.
It's great. So really excited about Adepticon. That's the moral of the story. Can't wait for that. 7 weeks.
Well, and there's new locations, so all new experiences, all new things to discover. It'll be like going again for the first time in a long time.
Yep.
And then one of the things that always comes along with our adventures to these is food stops.
Yep.
And while we have places that are regulars, this is now going to have to be all new.
I mean, and if you've been before to Milwaukee, most of my Milwaukee time, which I've been there actually quite a lot, but I've never really been outside of sort of the fairgrounds sort of area of Milwaukee, because I always went for Summerfest, but we always kind of like went very short term, spent the day, came home kind of thing, and so I didn't have a lot of time spent in Milwaukee proper. But if you've been there, listeners, and you've got some suggestions for us, let us know. Let us know where we should go. Because like I said, with it being in Schaumburg for so many years, we kind of knew where we liked. We knew where we wanted to go. We had our favorites. We had our places to avoid, that kind of thing. And now we're in our uncharted territory. So if you've got some ideas, feel free to let us know what your favorite place is.
Yeah, if you're familiar with that,
try it out.
City of breweries.
Yeah, try it out. I'll if you give me a winner, I'll tag you. I'll show you that I went there. It'll be exciting. A little community engagement. A little bit. So yeah. Speaking of,
we could try something.
I could go for something right now.
We could try something new.
Yeah. Let's eat.
Thanks for joining. We hope you enjoyed. Follow us for more of our weekly episodes on YouTube podcasts, Spotify, and Podbean. You can follow myself and Llama on Instagram. We are at Llama Paints Minis and Hyena Paints Minis. Music provided by Kevin MacLeod at incompetech.com. And as always, we'll catch you next time.